Ray Dalio is a billionaire hedge fund manager and philanthropist. He began investing at the age of 12 and has over 50 years of experience investing. He is the founder of Bridgewater Associates, founding it back in 1975 with assets under management, or AUM, of over $138 billion, while he himself is actually worth over $18 billion. He's also author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Principles. Today, we're going to be looking at his 7 rules for success. As always, let me know down below your favorite concept or idea. Remember, if you write it down, you're more likely to remember it and apply it in the future. My personal favorite is concept number 3. Mentor us, Ray Dalio.
Failure is a part of the learning process, right? What's the risk of failure? What, you'll be embarrassed, or risk of failure? How do you distinguish failure from learning? In your whole life, failure implies that it stopped, that the game stops, right? If it's part of you're failing and then you learn, then that learning is part of the moving forward, right? So that is what the process is like. Fail, learn, move forward, and constantly do that because you're cutting edge. You're going where people haven't been before in inventiveness.
I'm 64 years old.
Yeah.
I don't want to have fears of things that are being open. Fears of, in other words, I'm not going to let a fear stand in the way of something that I believe is valuable.
With the enormous success you've had, what do you want?
I just want to evolve. Everything is just personal evolution. And what happens is, I think the natural order of things is that you have these different challenges, and then you accomplish those challenges and then evolve. Mistakes are good things. Mistakes are good things, meaning if they're made in learning. In other words, mistakes are how we learn, because mistakes produce pain. And if you produce that and you convert that to learning, like, for example, punishing people for mistakes is bad because they hide things. Where if you were to say to your kid who makes a mistake, the only thing you have to do is tell me what would you have done different in the future, and then we'll be good. That makes that a learning process. Or weaknesses. Everybody has has a number of weaknesses. The great people that I've seen in almost any area always have weaknesses. They just have known what their weaknesses are and have ways of getting around those weaknesses. Sometimes the high points come from the low points. They're simultaneously, meaning I learn the most when I am making mistakes. And so I know, like, if I'm making money in the market, it might seem like a high point because you figure, okay, you're making money, but you don't test yourself as much. When you're making a low point and you're in misery, you're saying, how am I doing this wrong? And you're learning a lot, or at least I'm learning a lot. I think every place has to have a culture.
Right.
And culture is the values, what values are living out. And so, for example, the #1 value is it has to make sense to you. We have to talk about it. We have to work it through in a non-egotistical kind of way. And so it's an unusual place and it's an unusual culture.
Are you offended when people sometimes label it a cult?
I think a cult, when I think of a cult, it means believe this. And it's the opposite.
Yeah. You're taken from on high.
In other words, a cult means, somebody's telling you believe this.
Because I said so.
And follow it.
Because I have a superior wisdom.
Okay. It's exactly the opposite of that, right? The #1 principle is don't believe anything, think for yourself. And now let's go through a process of what is true together. But we can't stop that with ego. We can't let that barrier stand in our way. One sentence that I try to describe Bridgewater by, and it's meaningful work and meaningful relationships. This is what I want. Meaningful work and meaningful relationships through radical truth and radical transparency. So meaningful work means, like, we're in a mission together, we're excited about what we do, we want to do it excellently, that's meaningful work. Meaningful relationships are these relationships in where there's, like, the honesty helps you. You can argue things through, but you always know that there's honesty and that there's mutual caring for each other. Radical truth means that knowing what is true, to be able to deal with reality, whether you like the reality or not, but to know what reality is,
Like, imagine if you had a disease, would you want to know that you had that disease, or would you not want to know? I'd want to know. And so to know, if you have a weakness, do you want to know you have the weakness, or do you not want to know? Radical truth and radical transparency means you get to see everything. That's very powerful.
You're making the argument and explaining the need to have a diversified portfolio. But most people who have a diversified portfolio follow the market, meaning whatever the S&P 500 is, ultimately you're going to be up or down somewhere around there. You and some of your peers consistently outperform the market. And you do that, I assume, by making bets.
Well, we break it into two parts. We have two basic portfolios. There is the strategic asset allocation mix, which we call all weather, and that just has nothing to do with bets. It has to do with how to make all the assets the same risk parity. I would call risk parity. The problem is when people try to diversify and they own some equities, and equities has a volatility that's large, or they own assets that do well when the economy does well and do badly when the economy does badly, they have a concentration of their risk in some assets.
Right.
They need to change the portfolio. They need to buy longer duration bonds or leverage the bonds or bring up so that bonds and commodities and pieces have comparable impacts so that whatever happens in the economy will then have a balancing effect. Because the one thing you could be most confident is that asset classes on average will outperform cash.
Okay.
So if you have, that's a strategic asset allocation. That's what the all-weather piece is. Then there's the bets. The bets are zero sum, right? In order for you to beat me in the game, you're going to it's like poker. It's a zero sum game. We have 1,500 people who work at Bridgewater. We spend hundreds of millions of dollars on research and so on. We've been doing this for 37 years, and we don't know that we're going to win. In other words, we work that. We have to have diversified bets. We have a lot of diversified bets and so on. So it's very important for most people to know when not to make a bet. Because if you're going to come to the poker table, you're going to have to beat me. And you're going to have to beat those who take money. So the nature of investing is that a very small percentage of the people take money, essentially, in that poker game away from other people who don't know when prices go up, whether that means it's a good investment or if it's a more expensive investment. So pervasively, we were talking about culture. It is when people disagree, and you can take thoughtful people disagree, you have then the potential of learning a lot. If people who are disagreeing can say, why do we disagree, and work through that conversation in an intelligent way to try to find out what's true, you can learn, you can make progress. It can be a fabulous thing.
Why can't we civilly disagree? Isn't it a perversity of our society that people can't thoughtfully disagree? I mean, you and I go to a restaurant, somebody says, I like the food, the next person's reluctant to say, I don't like the food. That's weird, right? There's an aversion to disagreement. Thoughtful disagreement, when two thoughtful people who are intelligent disagree, that's when the power of understanding begins. Because they can then say, why do they disagree, and work themselves through it to make progress. And so it's a healthy thing.
But what happens if one guy thinks he's smarter than the other guy?
Well, they get to find out. And smarter, what you find out is different people are smart in different ways. So, by the way, you get to find out how people are different, remarkably different ways.
Right.
Some people are creative and not reliable. Some people are reliable but not creative. Some people are meticulous. Some people are big picture thinkers. In order to be effective, you find that people are smart in very different ways.
So the creative...
And there's an appreciation of those differences, because then when you realize that you need it all. And in order to have an effective group, you need a detailed thinker, you need a big picture thinker, you need the creative and the reliable.
The big picture thinker who's unreliable, you say to him, we just know you're unreliable.
It becomes so
But we love you so much because you're a big thinker. So
in other words, right, you can play that role.
Nice, okay.
You can play that role. Let's not pretend, okay? Okay, if you're very creative, this is often the case, a very creative person is not reliable. A big picture thinker is not detailed thinker. This is the way. And so they're all valuable, but you can make a team better. There's also mutual understanding and appreciation. In other words, I can appreciate things that in the past I would have been very annoyed at, because I think, for God's sakes, can't you see it? And I'm not realizing, you know, so there's an appreciation for that and the team, and there's an effectiveness to it.
I hope you guys enjoyed Ray Dalio's 7 Rules to Success. I hope you guys continue to persevere in whatever you guys want to achieve. I wish you guys a great day. Thanks for watching.